William Shakespeare. I mean, the name itself is just legendary, right? You've probably quoted him today and didn't even realize it. But here's the thing. Behind this literary giant, this monolith of culture, was a regular guy from a pretty humble background. So how on earth did he become maybe the most influential writer ever? Seriously, think about it. How does a kid from a small town whose dad made gloves for a living end up literally shaping parts of the language we use every day? How does he write the stories that we're still obsessed with centuries later? That's the real puzzle we're going to dig into.
Okay, so to really get the legend, you have to start with the man. In his story, it doesn't kick off in some fancy palace or a grand university. Nope, it all starts in a bustling little market town called Stratford-upon-Avon.
And man, his life was a whirlwind. Just look at this timeline. He's born in 1564. By his early 20s, he's off to London to make his name. Before he's even 35, he's a part owner of the Globe Theatre, the most famous playhouse in the world. He retires a rich man around 1610, and then he's gone by 1616. He was only 52, but what he packed into those 5 decades, well, it completely changed everything.
So yeah, his start in life was, well, pretty normal. Definitely not high society. His dad was a glove maker, a respected tradesman in town, but his mom, she came from a landowning family. And that's interesting, right? Because it means young William grew up with a foot in 2 completely different social worlds.
All right, let's just bust a huge myth right off the bat. There's this idea that Shakespeare was some uneducated natural genius who just magically came up with all this stuff. Not true. Not at all. He went to grammar school, which back then meant a super intense classical education. We're talking reading the great Roman poets in the original Latin. That training was the absolute bedrock for everything that came later.
And before he became the Bard, he was just a young guy starting a family. He got married at just 18 to a slightly older woman, Anne Hathaway, and pretty soon they had 3 kids. But you can just imagine, the ambitions bubbling up inside this young husband and father were way too big for a small town.
And oh boy, did he find his fortune in London. See, Shakespeare wasn't just some artsy writer locked away in an attic. He was a hustler, an actor, a playwright, and a really sharp businessman. He became a shareholder, a part owner in the top acting company in the city, the Lord Chamberlain's men. Then they built their own theater, the Globe. He was at the absolute center of the entertainment world.
So, you've got this guy who's ambitious, talented, and in the right place at the right time. But what's the secret sauce? What took him from just being successful to being, well, Shakespeare? It all comes down to his primary tool, an absolute mastery and reinvention of the English language.
You really have to picture it. In Elizabethan theater, there were no special effects, no complex sets, no dramatic lighting, nothing. If the play called for a stormy sea, a bloody battlefield, or an enchanted forest, all of it had to be built right inside the audience's imagination. The only tool they had for that was language.
And Shakespeare's words were the special effects. They were the CGI, the soundtrack, the whole shebang. He painted these incredible pictures in your mind's eye. He literally invented thousands of words and phrases we still use. His command of rhythm could make your heart pound with suspense or swoon with romance. Just the opening lines of a play could create a whole world of intrigue. For him, language wasn't just dialogue, it was the entire cinematic experience.
So, armed with this incredible linguistic toolkit, he didn't just write plays, he built worlds. And he didn't stick to one genre either. He mastered and transformed every single one he touched.
Take his history plays. These were not dusty, boring retellings of the past. He turned the chronicles of English civil wars into gripping national dramas. And by doing that, he did something radical. He helped his audience see themselves not just as subjects of a king, but as citizens of a larger nation, England. He helped forge a national identity, live on stage.
Then you have his comedies, which followed this brilliant formula. You take a group of young lovers, you add a dash of disguise and mistaken identity, and you just watch the chaos unfold. The journey always moves from the confusion of youth to the stability of marriage, usually ending in a joyful, celebratory wedding or 3.
But perhaps his most profound innovation was in tragedy. Before Shakespeare, classical tragedy was all about heroes crushed by an unavoidable destiny. Fate was in charge, but Shakespeare rewrote the rules. In his world, yeah, fate plays a part, but it's the hero's own choices and their own fatal flaws that seal their doom. He made the tragic hero responsible for their own downfall.
And that shift gives us these towering, complex figures of Hamlet, Macbeth, and King Lear. Their stories are these timeless explorations of power, ambition, and the darkest corners of the human heart. It was a truly revolutionary way to think about drama, and honestly, about ourselves.
So, we've got a master playwright and a savvy businessman. But how did his work survive for over 400 years to become the cornerstone of modern literature? The story of his legacy is nearly as dramatic as one of his own plays.
Now, this wasn't a case of a forgotten artist who was rediscovered centuries later. Oh no, people knew he was a genius in his own time. But when he died in 1616, many of his plays only existed as scattered notes and actors' scripts. His entire legacy was dangerously close to just disappearing.
7. That's the crucial number. What happened just 7 years after his death that ensured we would still be talking about him 4 centuries later?
The answer is the first folio. 2 of his friends and fellow actors took on the massive task of collecting his plays and publishing them in a single big book. Without this incredible act of friendship, iconic works like Macbeth, The Tempest, and Twelfth Night could have been lost forever. I'm not exaggerating when I say it's one of the most important books ever published.
Which brings us to the final essential question. Shakespeare gave us new ways to speak and think, and his friends saved those words from oblivion. But why do these 400-year-old stories of jealousy, love, ambition, and loss still feel so immediate, so deeply personal? Why do they feel like our stories? The answer to that is perhaps the ultimate measure of his genius.